December 25, 3018 of the Third Age. Following the Council of Elrond, the Fellowship of the Ring departs the safety of the elven fortress of Rivendell, and begins their long trek south, to the foothills of Orodruin, the infamous Mount Doom. Peregrine Took has returned to Hobbiton to persuade the forces of the North to mobilize against the Dark Lord of Mordor.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Solo Gamers Club. Thank you for joining me on my channel. Tonight we're going to be playing War of the Ring, and I'm going to be using my Alone in Middle-earth rule set. Since my initial video, I've made some changes to Sauron's gaze table, and I think that it'll be an improvement to gameplay. I'll bring the table up on the screen, and this is the new table that we'll be using for this playthrough. I've done some preliminary tests with it, but I haven't actually played a full game using the table, so this will be like our first use of the new system. This game is going to include the Lords of Middle-earth and Warriors of Middle-earth expansions, and we'll also be using the Council of Rivendell optional rules. Now, as we'll be using the Council of Rivendell optional rules, I'm going to bring up tables C, D, and E up on the screen. I use these tables to assist me in determining whether we're going to be using any of our alternate companions. And the tables produce the following results. We're going to have Gandalf the Grey, Keeper of Narya, will be starting the game, so he'll begin with his Nara die. We'll also be using Strider Dunedain. Then we also will be using Meriadoc, Hobbit of the Shire, and Peregrine, Hobbit of the Shire. I've also determined that Peregrine will start outside the Fellowship, and he's going to begin the game in the Shire. And we're ready to begin. We're going to start with Phase 1, and that's recover action dice and draw event cards. So the Free Peoples are going to start with 4 dice, along with the Nara die from Gandalf. And the Shadow player is going to begin with 7 action dice, along with 1 Shadow action token, and that's due to the fact that Peregrine will be starting outside the Fellowship. That token will allow the Shadow player to advance a Shadow Nation on the political track. The Free Peoples begin with the event cards Bilbo's Song, King Bran's Men, and the Ents Awaken. Shadow player has also drawn his event cards, but we'll keep those hidden for the moment. Next up is the Fellowship phase. The Fellowship of the Ring is currently in the Elven Fortress of Rivendell, and Gandalf, Keeper of Narya, will be the guide. Next step is Phase 3, that's Hunt Allocation. We'll be referencing Table A, the Hunt Allocation table. Shadow player is going to make a 2d6 roll, and that will determine how many dice he'll place in the Hunt box. There'll be a +1 modifier as listed underneath the table. It will be active, and we'll make the roll. Roll is a 4. That's modified to a 5, so the Shadow player will be placing 1 die in the Hunt box. Next up is Phase 4, that's our action roll, and we'll start with the Free Peoples player. Alright, they have rolled a event die, 2 character die, a muster die, and unfortunately the Nara die came up to be an eye, so that is going to be added to the Hunt box. Next up is the Shadow player's action roll. And he rolls 2 eyes, so we're going to have a total of 4 eyes into the Hunt box. He also rolled a character die, 2 muster army, and 1 muster die. All right. Now we'll move on to Phase 5, and that's the action resolution phase. And this is the situation that we have right now. We've got 4 action dice for the Free Peoples. We have 2 character dice, 1 muster die, and an event die. And there are 4 eyes in the Hunt box. The only information we have about the shadow player is he has 4 action dice as well. He has a muster army, a muster, and a character die. And he also has a special token that's going to allow him to advance on the diplomatic track. Now we don't know what his event cards are. We do know ours though, and we have one that's called King Bran's Men, and we'd be able to play that using our event die. But we have a special die from Gandalf, and that's his Nara die. And in order to preserve that for future turns, we have to attempt to move the Fellowship. But with 4 eyes in the pool, that is going to be dangerous. So I guess there's no option in that. I think we will attempt to advance the Fellowship. So in that case, I think we're going to play a character die, and we're going to declare advance the Fellowship action. That'll allow us to move the Fellowship progress marker 1 space. But now the shadow player can hunt for the ring, and he's going to get 4 dice in that hunt. Here's the shadow player's hunt roll. If he gets any 6, that's a successful hunt. Here's the roll. And we got lucky. The roll is 3 4s and a 2. So we're going to place that character die that we used to declare the advance the Fellowship action. We'll place that in the hunt box, and if any future advance the any hunt rolls would be at a +1 modifier for the shadow player. And now it is the shadow player's turn, and this is where the shadow bot will come into play. We're going to consult table B, and that's Sauron's gaze table. We're going to make a 2d6 roll and apply any modifiers that may apply, which are listed at the bottom below the chart. That will produce a result of the focus of Sauron. The bot is considered to be the lieutenant of Sauron, and it's his job to attempt to fulfill Sauron's actions, his desires. So in this case, it will produce a focus, which will be a region of the board, or focus on factions, or on the hunt. It will also give us a primary objective and at least 1 or more secondary objectives. Our mission as the Lieutenant of Sauron is to execute at least 1 action in the designated area of focus that he has commanded. Once we do that, we have fulfilled his focus requirements, and then any other actions that might be possible during the same turn can be used anywhere on the board. So as an example, if Mordor became the focus for Sauron, we would be able to say declare a move armies action, and as long as we move 1 army in the Mordor region and moving that army towards the primary objective listed, we would have fulfilled that portion of his focus. When to move armies, you get to move 2 armies. We could move any other army on the board anywhere else, either in Mordor or any other region of the map, as long as we fulfill his focus requirements. Now, for those that wish to have a more systematic method of prioritizing the use of an action die, I've created a table, which I'll bring up on the screen, and that is going to list various concepts in the game and the order at which we would prioritize those. So as an example, if we were to use an action die that would allow to bring a minion in, we would go through the A, B, C, D, E, F, G in order. In this case, recruit Saruman, Corrupted Wizard. If he's been brought in, we would try to bring in the Witch King, the Black Captain, etc. Another concept that is important for the Shadow Bot is to make sure that we utilize our event cards as best as possible. If these have a hand limit of 6, so we need to make sure that we're using those event cards in an efficient manner. So what we'll do is after we make the roll, we find out where the focus is. We'll examine those event cards and try to prioritize those first, the use of those first. All right, we're going to make a 2d6 roll and consult that chart. Now there is going to be one modifier for this, and I'll highlight that on the screen, and that'll give us a +1 to the roll. Here is the roll. The roll is a 6, and that's modified to a 7, and that means that Sauron's focus is going to be on Mordor. His primary objective is Osgiliath. So we're going to need to come up with an action with the available action dice that we have that can be fulfilled in Mordor. First thing we're going to do is consult the event cards that are available to the Shadow player. So we'll examine the available event cards we have and see if any of those can be played at this time. We have Stormcrow. Play if either the Fellowship or a companion is inside the borders of a free people's nation not at war. That one would qualify. The Fellowship or a companion is inside Elven territory, and they're currently not at war, so that could be played. Another one is Wormtongue. Play on the table if Saruman is in play. Well, that one won't be able to be used at this time, so we can remove that from the equation. The other one is a faction card that says Ships of Great Drought. Transport armies with Corsairs. That one won't be able to be used at this time. So it looks like we have to decide now whether we want to use that Stormcrow card or not, if that would help to fulfill the focus in Mordor. Now obviously that card doesn't directly affect Mordor for focus. So what I do is I have a set of dice called fudge dice. They have 6 sides, 2 pluses, 2 minuses, and 2 blanks. If you don't have a fudge die, you can use a standard D6. A 1 or 2 would be a negative, a 3 or 4 would be no result, and a 5 or 6 would be positive. And I use this system in many of my solitaire playthroughs if I'm attempting to operate the opposite team that I'm playing against to make tough decisions. In this case, if I was the lieutenant of Sauron and he commanded me to take an action in Mordor, I'm commanded to do that, but also to play event cards whenever possible. So what I'm going to do is rule that if I can get a plus result on this die, we'll play the Stormcrow card. Otherwise, we're going to make a different action, but directly relating to Mordor. So we'll make the roll and we'll see what happens. Okay, the roll is a neutral. So we're going to make a different action other than the Stormcrow card. In this case, I'm going to play an army die. That will allow us to move 2 armies. And I think what we'll do is we're going to move the forces in Barad-dûr into Gorgoroth. All of those are going to move in. And as our second action, doesn't have to be taken in Mordor. We could technically take it anywhere on the board. But I'm going to move these 2 forces from Nurn into Gorgoroth, and that'll build a large army there. So I think that would be a good fulfillment of Sauron's wishes for an action in Mordor. And that was a good example of how I use this system for solitaire play. The beauty of this is the game rules remain just as they're written. And this is just an aid in helping me play the other team without having to go through an endless list of if and then statements on a chart. So it maintains the same elegance of the game, and that's what I like about this. All right, now we move back to the Free People's player. He has 3 dice remaining to play. And with the considerations that we've got right now on the map, I'm kind of leaning towards using that event die to play King Bran's men. And I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to play the card King Bran's Men, and we'll use our event die to play that. And the card reads, recruit 2 North regular units in Dale, then draw 1 strategy event card. All right. So we're going to take 2 regular North units from the supply and put those in Dale. Then the card also allows us to draw another strategy card. And the strategy card is revealed to be a power too great. Play on the table. Advance the elven nation one step on the political track. While this card is in play, the shadow player cannot move an army into or attack, either in normal battle or in a siege, Lorien, Rivendell, or the Grey Havens. The shadow player can force a power too great to be discarded by using any one action dice and discarding any one army event card and one character event card from his hand. That's a very powerful card, so we're going to add that to our tableau of event cards, and we'll see if we can play that perhaps next turn. I just looked at our available dice. We do not have an army die in order to play that card, so that would require us to use one of the elven rings to change one of these dice to an event die or an army die in order to play that. So we'll have to think about that. But right now it's back to the shadow player. And now it's the shadow player's turn. We're going to make another roll and consult Sauron's gaze table. There is a +1 modifier that is active. Here is the roll. We rolled an 11, and that's going to be modified to a 12. And that the focus for Sauron in this phase is going to be the hunt. So looking at the notes, opposite of the hunt, primary objective is an asterisk, and it says attempt to bring the Witch King, Chief of the Ringwraiths, into play if possible. If not, consult the note below. Well, consulting the Witch King, Chief of the Ringwraiths, it says how the Witch King enters the game. If the Fellowship is not in a region which contains an unconquered Free People stronghold, the shadow player may use a muster action die result to play the Chief of the Ringwraiths. Well, we're not able to do that at this time because they are currently in a Free People stronghold. So then we'll have to go on to the next note. And the next note says, play a character event card that targets the Fellowship directly or indirectly. If not, consult the note below. Well, the only character event that we have is Wormtongue, and that won't be able to be played at this time because that requires Saruman to be in play. So we'll have to continue on reading the list. And that reads, if the last known position of the Fellowship is not in a Free People stronghold. Okay, that one won't qualify. So we'll move on to the next one. And it says, if the last known position of the Fellowship is in a Free People stronghold or on the Mordor track, use an action die to draw a character event card. If not, use an action die to position Nazgul or armies to provide rerolls during a future hunt roll. All right, so we're going to use an action die to try to position some forces in likely places that the Fellowship may travel to. And one way we can handle that is by playing a character die. And the character die will allow us to move minions and Nazgul. So I think what I'll do is we'll play the character die and we're going to move the Nazgul that we don't really need at this point, one in Morannon and one in Gorgoroth, and we'll move those into places that the Fellowship is likely to move to. So I'm going to position the Nazgul from Morannon in the Fords of Brunnen. And the Nazgul from Gorgoroth will place in Holland. Those are likely paths if the Fellowship chooses to go through Moria. And now it's the Free People's turn. We have 2 action dice available, a character die and a muster die. And I really want to play that a power too great card. So in order for us to do that, we're going to have to expend one of our elven rings to be able to change a die. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to use a character action die. We don't want to be moving the Fellowship anymore during this turn with the hunt box the way it is. And we're going to use Elrond's elven ring to change that into a different result. And we'll make that a event die. And with that, we're going to play the card a power too great. Play on the table, advance the elven nation one step on the political track. All right. So the Elven Nation is going to move into the next box towards At War. While this card is in play, the Shadow player cannot move an army into or attack either normal battle or siege, Lorien, Rivendell, or the Grey Havens. The Shadow player can force a power too great to be discarded by using any one action die and discarding one army event card and one character event card from his hand. So that's a very stern card that for the Shadow player to remove. All right. Now, unfortunately, that Elven Ring is going to be flipped, and that is going to be given to the Shadow player for his use. This card is going to be played on the table. We'll keep that out here, and the die is discarded. Now we'll move on to the Shadow player, and we'll make a roll, 2d6, adding 1 to the result, and consulting Sauron's gaze table. Here is the roll. The roll is a 7 that's modified to an 8, and Sauron's focus now is on Umbar and Harad. And we would really have a couple ways of fulfilling this request. One of them is to use our Shadow token to advance the Southrons and Easterlings one space on the political track. That would qualify. Another one is to play a muster army die as an army die, and we can make some movements with the Southrons towards their intended target, more than likely of Pelagar. So to resolve this quandary, we're going to make a roll using our fudge die. And we're going to have it as, if it is a negative result, that will be the movement of the armies. If it's a positive result, it'll be the play of the Shadow token and advancing them on the At War box. Here's the roll. The roll's a plus, so we're going to use this Shadow token to advance the Southrons and Easterlings one space on the political track. Now we'll return to the Free Peoples player. All we have remaining now is a muster die, and the only action we're going to be able to take would be to play an event card by playing a muster event card from our hand using that muster die. We currently only have the Ents Awaken, so that one won't really be able to be played at this time. The other option is a diplomatic action, and I think that's the one we're going to choose. So we're going to play that muster die as a diplomatic action for the Free Peoples, and then we can move one of those tokens towards the At War box. I think what we'll do is we'll use this opportunity to move the elves one space closer towards the At War box. They're already activated, so in theory they would be able to get to the At War box with one more diplomatic action. So I think that's what we'll do. Shadow player is up next. He has 2 dice available plus an Elven Ring. Now, one thing I should point out is part of the Solitaire rules is when the Shadow bot, the Shadow player, is reduced to his last action die, we won't be consulting Sauron's gaze table. Instead, that die will be used anywhere in the map to best effect. And we would use that to bolster areas that maybe are under threat of military attack or whatever the situation would merit. But for right now, they have 2 action dice left. They have 2 muster army die, and we'll make a roll on Sauron's gaze table. All right, here's the roll. We still have +1 active on the dice roll modifier. Here's the roll. Roll is a 5. That's modified to a 6. Sauron's focus is in the Moria Dol Guldur region. So Sauron's focus is on the Moria Dol Guldur region. Now that card, Power Too Great, is active for the Free People, so that's not going to allow us to do any attacks in the near future until we would get rid of that. But for the time being, what we can do is we're going to play a muster army die. We're going to play that as an army die, and that will allow us to make 2 movements, 2 separate movements of armies. And I think the first one will be from Dol Guldur. We're going to make a movement into North Anduin Vale. So we're going to move all of our forces, with the exception of one garrison we'll leave behind, and we'll move those into North Anduin Vale. That will allow us to strike at either Woodland Realm or Lorien if the opportunity arises. Now we have one other army movement available. We can technically take that anywhere on the board because we've fulfilled our focus for Dol Guldur or Moria. But I think our best bet is we're going to have the forces in Moria move to Demeril Dale. And that would allow them to eventually possibly link up with that force from North Anduin Vale. Moria is now unprotected, but there's really not much of a chance of that being taken at present. So that will be the Sauron's action for this phase, for this turn. And now we're down to our final action die for the Shadow player. So therefore we're not going to be consulting Sauron's gaze table. And we're able to use this die in any way, fashion that we choose, but giving priority to playing event cards. And I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to play this as a muster die. We're going to play the card Stormcrow. Play if either the fellowship or companion is inside the borders of a free people's nation not at war. Move that nation's political counter back one step on the political track. Then the Free People's player must eliminate one leader or army unit of that nation, regular or elite. Well, the fellowship is currently in Rivendell, so that's going to affect the elves. Their diplomatic token will be moved back one. And then that's going to force the elves to eliminate one unit. So we have a choice as to which one we want to eliminate. And it can be a leader or a regular or an elite. And that's a tough decision. We definitely don't want to deplete Lorien or the Woodland Realm too much. So I think it would have to be at Rivendell. And that would mean taking probably the leader out. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to discard this leader from Rivendell. As this is a Free People's unit, that's going to go to the box, and it'll never return in the game. And this is going to complete step 5 of our actions. As the action resolution step is complete, we'll move on to phase 6. That's our victory check. Unfortunately, none of the players have any victory points. So we're going to move on to a new round. And we'll begin with phase 1, recover action dice and draw event cards. So we'll begin with the Free Peoples. They did make a movement for the Fellowship, so that would entitle them to have that Nara die from Gandalf back into their pool. So they're going to recover their action dice. They have 4 of them, plus the Nara die. And the Shadow player is going to be able to recover a total of 7 action dice. Now the Free Peoples move, so they will eventually have to place 1 die in the hunt box. But we'll wait until step 3 for that. So the Free Peoples have drawn their event cards. They draw Challenge of the King. Play if Strider or Aragorn is with a Free People's army in Gondor or Rohan. Next is Kindred of Glorfindel. Recruit 1 Elven unit, regular or elite, in Rivendell. Then draw 1 strategy event. And then they have March of the Ents. Take an Ent figure from the Entwood to march the Ents, or eliminate an Ent figure from the Entwood to attack. All right, Ents are not active yet, so those are the cards that will be available to the Free People's player for the coming turn. Now the Shadow player will draw his cards, but we're not going to reveal those. We don't want to know the information on these until we have to, and that's part of the solo rules. We keep those hidden as long as possible so that it doesn't affect our playing of the Free Peoples. So this is the cards right now for the Shadow player. He has a total of 3 standard cards and 2 faction cards. The hand limit is 6 for the normal cards and 4 for the faction cards. Step 2 is our Fellowship phase. The Fellowship are still in Rivendell. They've advanced the track 1 point on the progress track, And Gandalf is currently the leader, the guide, and we're going to leave him as such, and that will allow us to use that Nara die. Phase 3 is the hunt allocation, so we're going to be consulting table A, and that is the hunt allocation table. We're going to be rolling 2d6, and currently there is a +1 modifier that is active, so we'll be adding 1 to the result. Here's the roll. Roll is a 9, that's modified to a 10, and that means that the shadow player is going to place 2 dice in the hunt box. So he'll be starting with 2 dice there. All right. Next is our action roll. Free Peoples will have 4 dice plus the Nara die. Here's the roll. And they roll Will of the West. 2 of those. Character die, muster, and a muster army. All right, that's a pretty good roll for us. We'll place those here. And now it's the shadow player. He only has 5 dice left because 2 were placed into the hunt box. And here's the roll. And he rolls 1 eye, so that'll be added to the hunt box. They've got 3 in there right now. Character die, army die, event die, and a muster army. All right, that is the pool for this coming turn. All right, the Free Peoples have a total of 5 dice. The shadow player has 4, so the Free Peoples must play a die. And we have 3 eyes in the hunt box. We do have 2 Will of the Wests, so we'll have to come up with a combination here that would work well. I think what we'll do is I'm going to play the event card Kindred of Glorfindel, and we're going to use a muster die to do that. It says recruit 1 elven unit, regular or elite, in Rivendell, then draw 1 strategy event card. All right. And I think we'll place a elite unit in Rivendell. Then that allows us to draw strategy cards, so we'll see what we get. Strategy card is Cerdon's Ships. Play if the elves are at war. All right. We'll discard that other card, and then we'll add Cerdon's Ships to our tableau. Now we'll move on to the shadow player. And we're going to make a roll on Sauron's Gaze table. It'll be a 2d6 roll, and we have a +1 modifier is active. Okay, here is the roll. Roll is a 5, that's modified to a 6, and that's Moria Dal Guldur again. All right. Well, with all things considered, the Moria Dal Guldur region, they need to get rid of this a power 2 great card that the Free Peoples have played. Otherwise, they have no ability to attack Lorien or Rivendell or the Wooden Realm. So in order to get rid of it, we have to discard any action die and an army event and a character event card from our hand. That's quite a lot. All right. So I think what we'll do is we are going to discard an event die, the character card Wormtongue, and the army card, strategy card, Half Orc and Goblin Men. None of those cards can be played currently, and the event die is probably the least useful to us at this point. So we will discard those things, and then Power 2 Great is off the map, which is what we want. And now it is the Free Peoples player again, and we have 2 Will of the West, a character die, and a muster army die. And I think what we'll do is we're going to attempt to move the Fellowship. There's 3 eyes in the hunt box, but we need to do that if we want to try to preserve that Gandalf's Nara die. So we're going to play a character die that will allow us to move the Free Peoples and advance them to box 2. But now the shadow player is going to do his hunt for the ring. He has 3 dice in the hunt box. He'll be rolling 3d6. Here is the roll. And they have no success. A 2, 4, and a 5. So we're getting lucky. So what we'll do is we're going to place this character die that we used for the Advance the Fellowship. We'll place that into the hunt box. And then that's going to modify any future rolls by +1. All right. And now the shadow player is up again. We'll be making another roll on Sauron's gaze table. It's a 2d6 roll. And +1 is still active. Okay, here is the roll. Roll is a 7, and that's modified to an 8. And that's going to be Umbar and Harad again. All right. All right, we have a character die, an army die, and a muster army die. We'll take a look at our available event cards and see what those have. We have Corpses of Candles. Play if the Fellowship is not in a region containing a Free People settlement. Okay, that's not going to be able to be played yet. We have one of the faction events is Wild Hillmen. Recruit 1 Dunlanding figure in each free Dunland settlement. Well, that doesn't really relate too much to Umbar or Harad. And the other faction card is Ships of Great Drought. You can make an argument for that one, but unfortunately, the Corsairs of Umbar are not in play at this time. So that really doesn't provide us with any options. So we're going to probably use our action dice for events in that region. And I think the most likely would be to play an army die, and that's going to allow us to move 2 armies. So I think what we'll do with the Harad is I think we'll have them move into West Hirondor with this army from near Harad. And I think we'll reinforce that with the 3 regulars from Umbar. That would give us a sizable force to attack Pelagar. So I think that makes sense. So we'll do that as our action. Next up is the Free Peoples. We have 3 action dice, 2 Will of the West, and a Muster Army. Shadow player has 2 unplayed dice, so we will need to play one. And I think probably the best thing we can do at this point is we'll use our Muster Army die. And we're going to play that as a muster die, and we're going to make a diplomatic action. And we're going to attempt to move the elves down a step. That will kind of make up for that card that the shadow player played earlier that pushed that diplomatic status up the track. So this would put us within 1 of the at war box, and that makes sense. We've got orcs on our doorstep in Dimril Dale, so I think that's a good play for that die. Next up is the shadow player, and we'll make a roll on Sauron's gaze table. +1 is added to the die. Roll is a 9, that's modified to a 10, and that's going to be Mordor. All right, we have no viable event cards to play, so we're going to use a die to activate some armies in Mordor. We're going to play that Muster Army die as an army die, and we're going to move 2 armies. And I think what we'll do is we'll move the force in Minas Morgul to North Athilion. That'll be the first army move. And the second one will be to move this force in Gorgoroth to Minas Morgul. And I've got to make sure we don't have 10 here. 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a total of 10. So we'll move that entire force into Minas Morgul. And I think we're going to end up replacing that with an army marker. It's getting a little too crowded there. So we'll replace that with the first army marker, and those units are placed in the top half of the first army box. And that's going to end the shadow player's turn. We'll move back to the Free Peoples. All right, we have 2 Will of the West dice that we can use. Now we could potentially separate some companions from the Fellowship, and that's a possibility. The other possibility is to use these Will of the West die for diplomatic actions. We really don't have enough movement right now. I've got 2 points in the Fellowship Progress box, and say if we were to move Gandalf, that would give him a total of 5 movement points. I mean, that's a possibility, but I think our best bet right now is we are going to bring the elves to war. So I think we'll play Will of the West die as a muster die, and we're going to advance the elves to the at war box. And then that's going to give us some ability to maybe lash out at the orcs that are approaching Lorien. All right. Now we're back to the shadow player. He has 1 die remaining. He has a character die. And we can use that now since this is the final die of this round anywhere in the map. So we'll have to think about what we want to do with that. And I think I'm going to play that character die to allow a leader to move an army. And in this case, we're going to move that force that is in North Anduin Vale, and we'll have them link up with the 2 orcs that are in Dimrildale. I think that would make sense. So I think we'll do that. Now the question is, do I want to leave an orc behind as kind of a line of communications back to Dol Guldur? I kind of like doing that because that, if the Fellowship was to say go through the other way rather than through Moria, we would already get some potential die roll modifiers automatically by those forces being positioned there, but it does reduce our attack potentially on Lorien. Well, I guess we'll move the entire force into Dimrildale, and I think I'm going to replace that army, or that force, with the 2nd army marker. It's getting a little crowded. All right, so I've replaced that force with the 2nd army marker, and they're definitely in position to strike on Lorien. That's going to be the last action die for the shadow player, and we have 1 die left for the Free Peoples, and that's a Will of the West die. And I think the best thing we can do is attempt to prepare for the potential coming onslaught from that 2nd army. So I'm going to use this Will of the West die as a muster die. Now the elves are already at war, so we're able to recruit, and that's what we're going to do, is we're going to use that muster die. The Will of West is now a muster die. We're going to use that to recruit in Lorien. And I think what we'll do is we're going to place an elite unit in Lorien. And that's 5 units there right now. Well, 4 units plus a leader. All right. And that's going to complete phase 5, the action resolution phase. We move on to phase 6, the victory check. Well, we still have no victory points, so we would proceed with a new turn. I like to try to keep these videos right around an hour because I know even for myself, many people don't enjoy watching videos that are very lengthy. So I'll probably end the video here. And I'm not sure if the viewers would like me to continue with this or not. It's probably not the most exciting watching me play through this, but I wanted to just give a overview of the new table that we've created and to see how that works out with a few turns. If there's interest in this video, I will continue the playthrough. Otherwise, I just purchased a new board game, which is Final Girl, which I'm very anxious to get to the channel. Purchased the 5 modules for it, plus the base game and the player mats, and I'm kind of anxious to get that to the table. But if there is interest in this playthrough, I will continue to play through it, and we'll see how it goes. And incidentally, I will, at the end of this video, I will have screen captures for anyone that's interested of the tables that I'm using in this playthrough and of the text from my solo rules. And I'll just tack those on to the end of the video. So thanks for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club. I hope you found this video interesting, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Have a good evening and a good week. Bye-bye.